You know what kind of game used to be everywhere now we don't see very many of? Space shooters.
Back in the early days of home consoles, the easiest kind of game to find were 2D space shooters. There were good ones like Gradius, and then if you take a look at Action 52, that's 52 games on one cartridge. It had more space shooters than anything else, and they all sucked. It seems like this was probably the easiest kind of game to make back in those days, which was perfect for a lazy developer looking to make a quick buck. But later, the Nintendo 64 gave us Star Fox 64. Finally, we could do a barrel roll! Yes, that. But we could finally turn and maneuver in a truly 3D environment rather than being strictly on rails the whole time. And that's the only 3D space shooter from that era that I know of. I'm sure there were more, but to be fair, it wasn't until the next generation that I got really into gaming, on the GameCube. And even then, I only ever found a few games that let you fly around in space. And while I'm thinking about it, why hasn't there been a new Star Fox game in so long?
Rob, find that black-hearted ape's location.
Target has been located at the Cincinnati Zoo.
Oh, that's probably why. The hardware was getting stronger, the graphics getting better, but the supply of shooting things in space, at least that I was aware of, was slowing to a drip. Fast forward to the next generation, I had an Xbox 360, and the closest thing to a space shooter I found on there was Dark Void. Sure, you fly around and shoot aliens, and you can even hijack their flying saucers, but it doesn't happen in space, so it doesn't count. Then on the PlayStation 4, we got those Star Wars Battlefront reboots, but here the dogfights in space are just one facet of the game that can be very easily overlooked.
My point is, it has been a very, very long time since we got a 3D game that I know of where most, if not all, of the gameplay is piloting a ship in space. Now, it wasn't until 2021 that the game I'm talking about was released. And it wasn't until 3 years after that I opened up Steam, and the first thing it showed me was Chorus.
You play as this lady. She was once part of a cult that worships entities from the void known as the Faceless and are obsessed with uniting everyone in everlasting harmony in chorus. And so they fly around and slaughter anybody who doesn't conform. Our protagonist destroyed a planet and then realized maybe this isn't the best way to achieve chorus, and so she left the cult and changed her name from Narin to Nara. Now, dropping one letter from your name probably isn't the best way to hide from a murderous space cult. I'm just saying a more drastic name change would provide some better camouflage. And I think it would be hilarious to have a space lady with face tattoos and a British accent going around saying, "Hello, my name's Frank." So Nara is living peacefully as a scavenger for the Enclave, then suddenly the cult shows up on their doorstep. Nara realizes nobody can live peacefully with these guys in the galaxy, so she picks up the sentient ship she had in the cult and hid away after knowing she'd have to take up the life she tried to leave behind and learn to live with herself after what she had done, as well as relearn all of the sacred rites she'd burned away that are completely different from the Force in every way. Now you might be thinking this just goes in a linear campaign like all the other space games that came before, but that's not the case. You get to fly around freely in each of the systems you go to. There's always the main mission marker right there staring you in the face, but you can ignore it and explore asteroid clusters and derelict space stations, find boxes of money to buy better weapons, upgrade modules that have a wide range of effects, or things to increase your max health and shields. You'll find side quests scattered all over the galaxy. Some of them just get you some extra money, others will get you new weapons or upgrades for your rights. This is the kind of exploration that 3D games are supposed to give you. It's not all just dodging lasers and shooting things. While that is a huge part of the gameplay, that's not what it's all about. Wide open spaces and stunning visuals that look and run beautifully even on my outdated PC. This is what I wanted from a 3D spaceship flying kind of game ever since I knew these games were a thing, which if I'm being honest, it took me longer than it should have to realize that these games were a thing. Like most games, the combat starts off easy, taking on small ships and stationary turrets, then working up to harder hitting, larger ships and faster, more evasive targets. So you need guns. And there are different guns for different problems. You got regular bullets that work for most targets, a laser that does more damage to energy shields, letting you expose the target's hull to real damage, and missiles that don't home in on targets, and I feel like the homing capability is what distinguishes missiles from rockets, but I might be wrong about that, so whatever. These deal more damage to armored ships, but they're harder to aim and are better suited to slow-moving or stationary targets. Each weapon has a couple variations. There's Gatling guns for sustained fire, and slug guns that shoot bursts of higher-powered rounds. With the lasers, there are some that can store up a few charges for some shots in quick succession, and some that blow their entire laser load with one powerful shot, then you have to let it recharge before firing again. And for the missiles, you got some rapid-fire smaller boys, or some that fire one much larger, one much more powerful missile at a time. You got all of these weapons at your disposal, as well as those rights I mentioned earlier. At the start, you only have your right of senses that lets you see where important objects, collectibles, and enemies are. You unlock more as you progress the story. Once you get your old cult ship back, you can drift, letting you turn freely without changing the direction you're moving in, letting you make tricky shots and quick turns. Then, the right of the hunt, allowing you to teleport to certain targets through barriers or jump behind enemies. Nothing personnel. The Rite of the Storm shoots a lightning bolt, destroying obstacles, instantly breaking enemies' shields, and making them lose control of their ship for a few seconds, which, if done in the right spot, will make them crash into a wall and die instantly. The Rite of the Star. It gives you a massive speed boost and the ability to punch through cracked walls and enemy ships alike, even ignoring any special protection from annoying support guys. And finally, the most overpowered right that you don't get until the end, the Right of Control. With this, you can just grab and throw enemies and objects. You haven't lived until you've killed a man with another man. Now, if there's one thing they did absolutely right, it's the controls. I could just say the controls are smooth and responsive and leave it at that, but that doesn't do it justice. It feels so good to control that it gives my hands the closest feeling to an orgasm they can possibly experience. There's just something so satisfying about boosting around and dodging all the gunfire and slipping through the openings as you cripple a colossal battleship and take out its core from within that just makes my brain go, oh yeah. Part of this is probably from the fact that holding your boost down makes it to where sustained fire from machine guns and beams can't hit you, but only if you're boosting at full speed. One thing I've learned in this, my third playthrough of the game, is you can boost a little slower for better steering by not pressing the left trigger all the way down. And I learned this because I got a new controller partway through the game that apparently has a less sensitive left trigger than my old one. I was boosting around wondering why these beams were still hitting me. I thought the game was glitching. I closed out and relaunched it. I even uninstalled the game and reinstalled it, but it still kept happening. In most battles, it's a little annoying, but you can still power through, but it makes this one particular encounter nearly impossible, which did lead to some minor frustration. But once I switched back to my old controller, things started working properly again, and now that I think about it, I probably could have fixed this problem just by remapping the boost button instead of using the old controller with a damaged wire that sometimes disconnects if I don't hold it right. The story is alright, you got character development and everything you need for a decent story, but I didn't feel any emotional attachment to any of the characters. Some of them die and then you're supposed to be like, no, I really liked them! But it's kinda hard to actually see them as people when you never see them in person. You only see their ship and a picture of what they're supposed to look like that shows up in the corner when they talk, but never the actual person. The only two people you ever see outside of a ship are Nara and the Prophet. Now, the only real complaint I have about the gameplay is the way the fast travel works. You've got these large systems to fly around in with all these locations and landmarks, but you're in space, so they'd probably be called space marks. Anyway, sometimes the mission takes you clear across the map to the other side of the system, and you can't just fast travel to the closest location to your next mission. You can only fast travel to the jump gates in each system. You can jump to them from anywhere at any time, but only to them. If your mission isn't close to a jump gate, all you can do is hit your sublight drive and wait. Sure, there are these acceleration gates that further boost your speed as you pass through them, but they don't always line up with where you need to go, so you have to think, would it be faster to go out of my way to use the gates, or just make a beeline for my destination and forego the extra speed? At least little side quests pop up to break the monotony of just flying through the system. It's usually a small combat encounter or picking up energy cells and selling them to a random scavenger who immediately jumps in after you've grabbed them. All things considered, the occasional extended periods of just flying don't take too much away from the game. All the free-flying combat and great control makes up for that. And this game does prove that space shooters aren't a dead genre. They may have been overdone in the 80s and 90s, but it's as classic as gaming itself. And as long as people play video games, there will always be a market for shooting things in space.